I hereby open the work session of the Springfield Planning Commission. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Buck,
Present.
Commissioner Driggs,
Present.
Commissioner Thompson,
Present.
Commissioner Greenwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schmunk,
Present.
and Commissioner Weber.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right, hearing none. This is a meeting where the public may attend but not provide comment. There will be opportunities to address the Planning Commission later tonight in our regular meeting, which follows the work and CCI session. I'd like to call our first agenda item, the Housing Design Initiative Code and Plan Audit. Haley?
Can't move it forward. I'm just gonna have to lean forward. Good evening, commissioners. Haley Campbell, Senior Planner for the Housing and Design Initiative Code and Plan Update. I will be presenting kind of an introductory to the project, and then Victor Tran, who is our consultant from Cascadia Partners, will kind of fill in most of the background and the information that is in your packet tonight, and then we'll be available for questions. Victor, will you share your screen of the presentation, please? Excellent. So the agenda for tonight, you're going to hear a little bit about the project background and goals, the required actions to comply with the state housing laws. That includes the legal compliance audit and the clear and objective standards audit. Then there are some strategic recommendations to support housing production. That includes amendments to the neighborhood refinement plans and to address barriers to housing production, primarily focused in the commercial and mixed use districts. And then finally, we'll end the presentation with next steps in the timeline for the rest of this project. Victor, next slide. Okay, so as far as the project background and goals, I know I came to you guys in March about this project where we approved the community engagement plan. So right now we're working on the audit, which is the next phase or the first phase of this project. And again, the background on this is to bring the city code into compliance with housing related statutes and state rules. That's the #1 goal. The second part of that is streamlining regulations to boost housing production, affordability, and choice. So as you can see on your screen, the code and plan changes. Those are the legally required things. Again, compliance with state law and clear and objective standards. Then you have the strategic recommendations, and again, that's covering your neighborhood refinement plans, concepts for removing development barriers in commercial and mixed use districts, and again, kind of addressing anything that we might be able to for supporting housing production, affordability, and choice. And then we kind of go into the community engagement strategies. So again, based off of what happened at what we discussed with the community engagement plan, we have the technical advisory committee, which we'll be discussing later this evening, as the Planning Commission acting as the CCI. We'll also be discussing the governance committee. 2 members of the Planning Commission and 2 members of the City Council are elected to be part of that governance committee. And then further along, when we get to the adoption stage, of course, there will be the Planning Commission and City Council meetings. Victor, next slide. So how does this work with the climate-friendly areas? Obviously, I'm not the first planner to come to you guys with code updates. Chelsea Hartman, another senior planner in the Comprehensive Planning Department, has come to you all with the Climate-Friendly Areas Project. And that focuses, again, they identified 3 primary climate-friendly areas, the Glenwood Riverfront, downtown, and Mohawk. This project, in contrast, is focused on other areas outside of those primary climate-friendly areas. And again, we'll still be focusing on those state requirements and supporting Springfield's broader housing and livability goals. So still, again, focused on those commercial mixed-use areas, but outside of the climate-friendly areas.
Thanks, Haley. I'll do a quick introduction and I'll carry on with our presentation here. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Victor Tran. I'm a project manager with Cascadia Partners. We're a multidisciplinary urban planning firm that's tasked with helping the city with this project. I'm joined today with my colleague Rachel Cotton, so you might see her as part of the panelists here as well. So we're excited to share with you the findings from our first major deliverable for the project, which is the code audit. So like Haley said, there are portions of the project that are meant to bring the city's code into compliance with state statutes. You can think of these as the things that the city must do. And there are portions of the project that are centered around strategic recommendations that are not mandatory, but could help the city leverage its policies and code for greater housing production, affordability, choice, things like that. So I'll make sure to call out which of these sections are legally required versus some of the more strategic housing recommendations that we have. This first section has to do with legal compliance with state statutes. So these are required and mandatory. So as a part of this project, we reviewed Springfield's code against Oregon revised statutes, and there are a few of them, so I'll list them quickly. So we reviewed them against ORS 197. These are the comprehensive land use planning rules centered around allowed housing types, procedural requirements, clear and objective standards. We also reviewed against ORS 215 and 227. These have to do with permitting and review. And finally, ORS 92, which is around land divisions. The Appendix A, as part of your packet, has our full findings and recommendations. So you could see where the city is in terms of compliance. And I'll summarize briefly as we move through the presentation for some of these key sections. So you'll see that there are a lot of sections that Springfield is currently already in compliance with. So there are no changes required for the sections that you see as a part of this table, everything outlined in green. The next section has to do with state statutes that we found where the city's code is partially in compliance. There are a few things that need to be tweaked or adjusted or amended to bring the city's code into full compliance. You'll see them listed in the table on the right. And generally, these include allowing residential homes in zones where a single family is allowed, clarifying allowances for residential care facilities in mixed-use districts, permitting manufactured home parks in all zones that allow a certain level of density, allowing prefabricated dwellings in manufactured home parks, and finally ensuring that there's no minimum lot size greater than 1 acre for manufactured home parks. We will come back to this section called Clear and Objective Standards for Needed Housing. It's a more comprehensive section, so I'll loop back to that in a few slides. The next section is related to sections of the city's code that is found not to be in compliance with state statutes. So there was only one that came up in our review, and it has to do with the occupancy of recreational vehicles. Per the state statutes, the city has to allow RVs to be used for residential occupancy with no time limit in RV parks and manufactured home parks if they are sufficiently connected to water, electricity, and sewage. So that's a requirement that would need to change in the city's code. Additionally, the city would have to allow RVs to be used for residential occupancy, again, with no time limit, without utilities following a natural disaster, and finally, to align temporary use provisions and expiration timelines with the other ORS section here. So only one section of the city's code found not to be in compliance. The last part of our audit has to do with sections of the city code that were found to be not out of compliance, but additional codification of these standards are recommended to improve clarity within the city's code. So you'll see we highlighted one section here, and that is to directly codify the ability for applicants to opt in to newly adopted development standards. after submitting an application, and that responds directly to ORS 227-178. So that's our code audit up until the clear and objective review. So I'll go over this a little bit more because it is a more comprehensive section. So there is a state law that requires cities to have clear and objective standards, conditions, and procedures when regulating development of housing. And this applies to design standards, development standards, special overlay, district regulations, and any land use application approval criteria related to housing. When I say clear and objective, it comes from this specific ORS section 197A 400, and they provide very clear examples of what clear and objective means. So as an example, on the right, we pulled something from the city's code. I believe this is from the nodal development overlay section in their design standards. So currently there's a section regulating massing that says break up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller varied masses, avoid single monolithic forms that are not relieved by variations in massing. You'll notice that there are a few keywords that come across as subjective and open to interpretation. And in the eyes of this state statute, is not clear and objective. In order to make it clear and objective, one could rewrite this standard for massing to something as follows. Buildings shall incorporate at least 2 of the following massing techniques for any facade longer than 50 feet. And there would be a bulleted list of ways that applicants could meet that standard by choosing 2 of the following. So hopefully that's clear. And the last thing I'll say about this is there are alternative approval options. They're not required to have clear and objective standards, so long as there is a separate approval pathway that is clear and objective. Another way of saying that is a city doesn't have to make every approval process clear and objective, but it has to offer at least one path that is clear and objective. So we went ahead and did a comprehensive review of the city's code for clear and objective standards to see and mark up sections that either were in compliance or not. The next 3 slides touch on sections that we found that were not in compliance with clear and objective standards. So each slide is a different chapter. This one is chapter 3, which is the land use districts. And our key findings for this chapter are there were recently amended sections of the development code that meet state requirements and they don't need further refinement and they're good to go. So that's a plus, that's a good thing. However, in the mixed use zones, such as the Glenwood Riverfront Mixed Use Plan District and a few other mixed use zones, we found instances of discretionary language that would need to be amended to be clear and objective. An example would be the one that I showed in the previous slide, this one around massing. Finally, there are overlay districts such as the Willamette Greenway, floodplain, hillside development overlays that also have instances of vague or subjective language. So updates would need to be implemented in order to make these sections clear and objective. Chapter 4 is touches on development standards. In our review of this chapter, we've similarly found instances where there were discretionary language used in the chapter. So things like to the maximum extent practicable, substantial adverse impact, or they defer decisions to staff judgment. So those are things that we need to change in order to make them clear and objective. And there were some other areas that lacked objective measures. So this has to do with terms like adequate, minimum necessary, safe and efficient. These sections lacked an objective definition of what those things are. So we included those as a part of our findings. And finally, chapter 5, development review process and application. You'll see a repeating theme here. So there were a few sections that referenced submittal requirements that were unclear. So the language revolved around things like where applicable, as needed, or may include. That makes it, that makes it difficult to determine what exactly applicants would need for the applications. And same with some of the requirements for the definition of physical features. So these terms here, significant clusters of trees, riparian areas, transportation issues, are too vague and would require amendment in order to make clear and objective. So that brings us to our plan audit. So as Haley said, there were some sections that are mandatory in order to bring the city's code into compliance with state statutes. The plan audit, we found that the neighborhood refinement plans that were reviewed, so the ones listed in this table here, are consistent already with statutory requirements, so no changes there. However, we conducted an additional review to understand if there were other barriers to housing production in general. And what we found was that there were a few key themes that emerged out of these neighborhood refinement plans. The themes include large minimum development areas. So a few of the plans state requirements for minimum parcel sizes for new residential development. And some of these sizes are prohibitive of smaller infill projects or incremental types of housing development. So something to note. Another theme was additional planning requirements. So some of the refinement plans required things like development area plans or master plans before residential development could happen. And these requirements could add time or complexity to the process. So that's something we noted. And then two other themes, policies that favor downzoning or commercial. Some of the refinement plans recommend rezoning residential land to either office or commercial use, which could reduce the overall supply of land available for residential. And the last one here, unclear or potentially restrictive language. Refinement plans that we reviewed, some of them had policies that encourage setbacks or buffers beyond what is required by code. And we'll note that these are not enforceable as written, but they could conflict with the city's housing production goals if they're interpreted too rigidly. Okay, so our last section here is called Other Barriers to Housing Production. So these are additional findings and potentially recommendations that we would provide to the city that could increase housing production, flexibility, and choice. I'll note again that these findings are not part of the our review of the code earlier that was mandatory to bring the city code into compliance with state statutes. These are simply best practices that the city could consider as part of their housing related work. To do this, we looked at a few different types of compact housing. So you'll see them on screen here. And we wanted to understand where within the city these different housing types are already allowed within commercial and mixed use zones that allow residential. In instances where they're not allowed, we wanted to understand what were the key issues or barriers that were prohibiting these housing types from being allowed. So our findings are marked in this table here. You'll see the different zone districts called out on the left-hand side, and then the compact housing types on top. Cells that are marked in green show where those specific housing types are allowed and supported by the different zone districts. Cells shown in yellow show where the housing types are mostly supportive or allowed. There might be a conditional use or a few minor adjustments to the code needed to allow for that housing type. So almost allowed, but not quite. And finally, red demarcates where these housing types face significant barriers in order to be allowed and developed in these particular zones. The goal here is not to bring every cell into the green color, but it's a way for the city to inquire where changes and amendments could be introduced in order to allow for different types of compact housing. So this will feed into a later stage of the project where we work with the city to come up with code concepts, so ways that the city can consider changing and amending plan and code to greater improve housing production and flexibility. And this research goes to support that phase of the work. So I'll note again that these are kind of early findings and strategic recommendations for that phase. As a part of our findings for this research, I'll list them quickly. So one of them is around prohibition on standalone residential. A lot of the commercial zone districts are meant for commercial, and they have direct language in their zone intent for commercial dominance. And that's something to note, that these zone districts don't allow standalone residential, which makes it more complicated if the city wanted to allow for some of these housing types. I've alluded to the second one. So the zone intent and commercial land supply. There's some zones that are intended for commercial uses only. So standalone residential development would be inconsistent with that zone intent. Furthermore, there is cause for the city to want to analyze their supply of land that is zoned for commercial development, and if it's sufficient to meet the commercial land supply. And finally, we noted that there were a few development regulations like height and lot coverage that could restrict the feasibility of a multi-story residential building, for example, from being built. Okay, so I believe this is our last slide here, our second last slide. We concluded this section by saying it's a policy consideration for the city whether to allow more housing in commercial and mixed-use zones. And a part of that information relates back to this balance between residential and non-residential. We have a graph here on screen that shows retail lease rates and retail vacancy over time. You'll see that both tend to go up and down, but for the last 15 years or so, lease rates have not increased very much, and vacancies have fluctuated but remain quite high. And it's a consideration to say requiring ground floor commercial is tricky. It could increase costs and potentially reduce project feasibility. This is due to typically higher construction costs needed to allow for that commercial ground floor use, in addition to the weaker market demand as shown by the graph here. So vacancies remain high, lease rates have not increased. With that, I'll turn it back to Haley to go over our project timeline and schedule, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Victor. Excellent. So on the screen, this is kind of the last slide tonight about the project timeline. So as you can see, the gray dashed line that goes down in May, that's where we're at right now. This is the code and plan audit. We hope to finalize it tonight. We will also be taking this audit to City Council next week, Tuesday, to get their input. So after we have any input from the Planning Commission tonight and then City Council, we'll finalize the audit. After that, the next stages are the code and plan concepts. That should last until September. Within that, we'll have our first round of engagement. That the graphic's a little off, but that will happen from July to August. Also within that code and plan concepts phase, council goes on break over the summer. So that would be around the time that we would probably host a governance committee check-in ad hoc meeting. So we'll talk about that as part of the CCI, but 2 members of the planning commission would probably attend that meeting. So be thinking about in your brain if you want to be a part of that ad hoc governance committee and if you're available this summer to attend one of those meetings. And then this fall, we'll be finalizing the project, basically. We'll be drafting those code and plan amendments, hopefully to finish it by the end of the year. Again, that engagement timeline is subject to change. I think it's about October to November, first part of November. And then again, we'll have an adoption package ready, hopefully, subject to change by the end of this year, December, and we'll be taking it through the adoption process next year. This stuff can happen a little fast. We're hoping that the package will be ready, but I can't imagine that we'll be adopting any sooner than June of next year, just because you guys know how quickly these adoption packages need to happen. So anyway, as far as the questions for tonight, your agenda item summary, there were 3 questions for discussion, and they are the differences between the required actions and strategic recommendations clear to the Planning Commission? Is the definition of clear and objective sufficient? What about how the clear and objective standards are written? And then are there any suggestions or feedback for the code and plan concepts phase? Again, the next phase on the screen. And again, I pointed out that there was 1 round of community engagement that'll be happening from July to August. So if you guys have any suggestions for how we can do that, I'm all ears. So yeah, I'll be here to answer questions, and Victor will also be here to help answer questions.
Okay, so you're turning it over to us for
I am.
discussion.
Yeah.
Just making sure I'm clear on that. Okay, at this time, I want to open it up to any planning commissioners that either have questions, comments, or would like to respond to Haley's questions. Oh, come on, don't be shy. Commissioner Spunk?
So, not sure where this is in the material, but talks about familial relationships, and says that city can enforce maximum occupancy limits in either familial or non-familial situations. Can you tell me what that means?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have Victor cover that one because I am not sure where that's from.
Victor, I cannot tell you where that is in the documents. I think it's in the compliance summary.
Yeah, no worries. I'm pulling up the our matrix here. So that has to do with ORS 9112, and that section, that ORS section states that the city cannot enforce a maximum occupancy limit for any residential dwelling unit if the restriction is based on familial or non-familial relationships among occupants. And our finding, again, is that the city code as written currently already complies with this section. But is there a question around what the interpretation of that ORS section, like what that means?
What's not familial or non-familial?
So that, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Victor,
Rachel,
I'm going to
but-
have Christina, my city attorney, jump in. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay. Victor, do you?
Oh,
Victor, do you want to cover this one? Go ahead.
oh, sorry. Yeah, to my understanding, that just means if it doesn't matter if the occupants who live within the same dwelling unit are related to each other or not. So that's, if they are related, that's familial. If they're not related, that's non-familial. The city cannot enforce a maximum occupancy limit for either, whatever the composition of that dwelling unit is.
Victor, I
Well,
can
and
help out a little
ahead.
bit if that's, I think
Sure.
like an example of what you might see in some codes is saying, no more than 4 people who are related may live in this type of dwelling unit, or 3 people who are not related. Like that's kind of shorthand for what you historically might have seen in some codes. So the statute is saying you can't, one, have a variation based on if people are or are not related, and 2, enforce that occupancy based on that. Does that help answer your question?
So you're saying you can establish a limit, but you can't use the criteria of family relationship.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It wasn't clear. Okay. So, okay, yeah. Also in Exhibit B, it asks specifically the market constraint calculation showed that there are significant barriers, including infrastructure constraints, lack of landowner willingness, and broader market fundamentals. So I'm wondering tell me about the landowner willingness. Can you give us a broad picture of what you're talking about there?
Yeah, I assume this is the market study memo as part of the Springfield CFA project.
Yeah, I
One
suppose.
second, okay, I don't have it in front of me, but from my my memory of that study, the willingness, so that portion has to do with land aggregation. If there are disparate landowners across an area, and let's say the city wants to develop and have an area be developed for future housing, it's more complex due to the fact that there are varying levels of landowner interest and motivation. Some landowners might be highly motivated to go ahead and develop something or submit an application. Some might not want any change at all. So I believe that portion was reflecting on that point that having different landowners and different motivations could make that process more complicated.
So in your review, you talked to folks. Some folks were not supportive of some of the things that were being discussed. It's kind of what I understood this to be, that there were folks that, for lack of information, or they're well aware of it and don't like it, but basically there was a resistance to some of the plans.
We, as part of the consultant team, did not do that engagement of talking with landowners. And I'm going to read that specific section just so I know what I'm talking about here. So
It's just
we're
Exhibit B. I don't know, if I find it here. I think it's Exhibit B.
I think it's page 33 of it. Yeah. Or the second or third page.
yeah,
Victor.
I found it here. Yeah. Okay, great. So that section has to do with pinpointing the differences between the state assigned methodology for housing capacity calculation versus a more market driven study. So this is a little bit outside of this current project that we're presenting tonight. But to clarify, I'll say that we wrote that section for one important reason, and that's because according to the state requirements, you could show that the climate friendly areas assigned and implemented in Springfield can meet a certain housing capacity through the prescribed methodology of the state, which is very generous and based on kind of the redevelopment of all parcels within the assigned climate friendly area. Our market study was focused more on the understanding that due to infrastructure constraints, lack of landowner willingness, so again, that piece of information that is hypothetical, but the idea that not all parcel owners and landowners within CFAs would want to develop or redevelop, that's a factor in what might result in a more realistic housing yield, and broader market fundamentals. So that's around the general development feasibility of new types of residential and mixed use buildings. These are factors that have to be taken into consideration when calculating more market aligned housing yield. So we use those factors to say probably the development and redevelopment of areas assigned as climate friendly areas will be very different from the assumption made through the state methodology, which is every single parcel will redevelop into something higher density.
Okay,
Does that help
okay,
answer
thank
the
you.
question?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I thought these were more, that referred more to some direct contact with landowners, but you said that wasn't the case. I guess another question, and trying to find it here in the document, but understanding you were indicating that there are different drawbacks to the CFA and with no single CFA the different CFAs, none offering enough infrastructure capacity to accommodate significant housing growth without additional investment. So what type of investment are we talking about? Are we talking about, I mean, maybe it's all encompassing, but is the city, is the state asking the city to do infrastructure type improvements or subsidize housing directly?
There is no requirement for either. I think if I'm understanding your correct or your comment well, it's the idea that in order for development to occur in climate friendly areas, there would likely need to be more investment on the city's behalf. The state, within their land use requirements for CFAs, they do state that CFAs are prioritized for certain types of public amenities, parks, plazas, open space, that type of thing. And these things will, it's a little bit of a squishy area, but my understanding is they will be codified in a future TSP update. So it's not immediate how these things are resolved. One quick amendment to what I said about the interviews with landowners. The two that we spoke to were the Glenwood Development Team and Peace Health. So Peace Health is out of one of the proposed CFA areas that was ultimately not selected. And you'll see in our memo there, we have notes of our conversations with these two groups. But as a way to understand that, for example, the Glenwood Development Team already in the process of a major housing project and rezoning development. Peace Health, they have other plans. They need to reserve the majority of their campus for medical expansion. So it's another way of saying, yes, this indicates different levels of landowner willingness for development within CFAs. Some, like Glenwood, are already motivated and working towards redevelopment. Some are not. Hopefully that answers your questions.
Yep, appreciate the clarification. Thank you. That's all my question.
Great.
I think we want to make sure we get all of our planning commissioners. So we're going to go with Commissioner Driscoll, Commissioner Greenwell, and then to you, Commissioner Thompson, and then I'll finish up.
For the first question, are there differences between the required actions and strategic recommendations? If they're clear, I think they're pretty clear what's required and what is a recommendation. Question 2 on the definition of clear and objective. Can you go back to that one? Because I think I might have like skimmed over that. Okay. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear and the examples are easy to understand as well.
And if I may too, in the memo, let's see, what page was this? There's a under the clear and objective standards audit, there's some handy dandy little examples at the bottom of the memo that are really great. So it says, are they true and false standards? So in this instance, it'd be like, is the property in a mixed use residential district? Yes or no? Quantitative standards, maximum building height of 30 feet. List or menus, any of the following or at least two of the following options, and then 2-track systems. So again, is it clear and objective or could it be discretionary? So I think that's a really good example of kind of what we were trying to get at of what does it look like?
Yeah, I agree. I read that section and it was really easy to follow and understand what you all were getting at. I don't think I have any suggestions yet for the code and plan concepts phase. I'll pass it over to Commissioner Greenwell.
I guess what I'm wondering about in question 2 is just following up a little bit. Clear and objective standards as written. What kind of resource do we have, what does the state have to refer to when setting up these standards, just so they're more justifiable? And I guess the example, the page you have up here, building shall incorporate at least 2 of the following massing techniques. I'm sure that's going to be a list of bullet points like you said, but where does that list come from? Is that list exclusive? Is it, can it be, can somebody propose another item to the list that would make perfect sense in the situation? I guess I'm looking for, where is that clear-cut standard that will justify changing the language in that example specifically or generally? Thanks.
That's a great question. Rachel, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. So there are 2 parts to your question. One is getting the list to match the intent of the statement, right? And in terms of asking if there are resources from the state, this project is funded by Department of Land Conservation and Development. So we're working, the resource is essentially technical assistance to help the city with these amendments. And so I think that answers the first part of your question. The resource is basically funding to kind of work through some of these issues that we've flagged in our code audit. And the second piece has to do with that alternative approval. So if you're saying, you know, there are certain cases, and we can all probably think of them, where someone's development concept doesn't hit all the notes in the clear and objective list, but is achieving the same sort of objectives. And so that's where the discretionary track potentially comes into play. Like, you can't do it the clear and objective way, but you think the way that you want to do it can be justified, and then you would go through the discretionary track. But the clear and objective track gives you at least an obvious way, like if you meet this and this and this, very clear, you know, like Haley said, true or false, numbers, measurable things. Pick 3 out of these 5 things from these lists. If you do that, that's one way to get through, or you can make a case for the different way that you want to do it. Does that answer your question?
Mostly. I guess I used resource in a different way. I was thinking more of an actual language resource,
Yes.
of not financial resource that
Got
we
it.
can
So-
use to justify the clear language.
Yeah, so we work on similar projects all over the country and across the state. And so we have some sort of best practices at our fingertips when we're working with staff. We know, you know, every city's code and districts are a little bit different, but there are some kind of best practices and standards that we can provide. You know, often we do, for something more complicated, we might present a few alternative options and say, like, which of these is getting the closest to what you want. But we will work with the Planning Commission and staff on that sort of thing. Like, it's very atypical that you would find an example that's never been done anywhere else. There's usually a pretty good, clear and objective example that you can find for all of these things.
Thank you.
I think Stan, you wanted to say a few words here?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer what I'm hearing in your question from a different perspective than what Rachel's saying. So she's giving you examples about code language. I think when you asked about, could you add something else that seems reasonable to the list, for example, what we're going to be doing is looking at policy direction. Usually the codes are written to implement policies that have been adopted. So it's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? that will be driven by adopted policies, perhaps in our plans. And so it's like, are we trying to go for neighborhood compatibility? What would that mean in this case? And then how do we accomplish that? So within that, there is local discretion. The state hasn't gotten so prescriptive as of yet that they are writing the codes for us. But as Rachel said, they are providing technical assistance to help us get there.
Commissioner Thompson, would you like to comment here?
I would. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Victor, for the great presentation. Very well done. I think the other commissioners have really well hashed out questions 1 and 2. Specifically to number 1, I will say I think the delineation between required actions and strategic recommendations was really well done, because that was a question I would have as a member of the public. Kind of honing in on, I guess, question number 3, and I noted that this includes a round of community engagement. I really liked slide 20 in particular, and how you break down retail vacancy versus retail lease rates, and how basically retail lease rates is pretty flat versus vacancy is up. And so in my mind, as a person who would be attending this from the public, I'd be going, well, what is the city maybe going to do to adjust this? I loved how you explained that and then provided visuals for possibilities. I think if you help the public understand how that relationship, specifically in the data, it represents. So a question I would have as a member of the public is, well, if a barrier to this whole objective is that requiring a component of commercial development to a mixed use space is possibly a detriment, it makes things more expensive. In my mind, I'd be like, well, then is the city going to basically decrease commercial and increase, basically take that out as a requirement to then maybe incentivize more affordable housing development, if that's really what we're looking for. So anyways, what I was trying to emphasize is in the community engagement portion, just visuals. I love visuals, and explaining what the data means would be really, really helpful for folks in the public. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I concur with the other commissioners. I think that on question 1, it is clear. I think it's helpful to how you illustrated that. So I thought that was really well done. I think that on question 2 is clear and objective. I also agree that that's fairly clear. I think your examples really help. I do think that it's important to note, as you have, that there only has to be one clear and objective. There can be alternative solutions. So maybe there's 5 options. Only one of them has to be clear and objective. And just making sure that remains kind of clear. Like, hey, we have to have one that's clear and objective, but there can be alternatives to that. I think that's very helpful. And then when I think about this from question 3, from the stance of the public, I think most people, I think it's fair to say, have heard the state is really interested in us developing housing inventory. And as Mr. Tran commented, that the state would love to see every parcel high density, right? I mean, that we kind of feel like that's the message we're getting. I think the visuals help with kind of showing the differences. And the only thing that might be of note is what mechanisms you guys are using to find that balance, because we know that there's balance between residential, mixed use, and commercial, and all 3 are important, and there has to be a balance there. And so what does that look like? Because as we start doing more mixed use and/or higher density residential, those kinds of things, as we start incorporating those, that makes the city look different. And it's very hard for people, I think, to read or see a diagram and then sit and then correlate that to, but Main Street's going to look different, or the block that I walk my dog is not going to look different. And so I think that trying to help them understand the metrics that you use, and just kind of putting out there that that's going to make this look that's going to change the look of this, because this is what it is now and this is where we're going. I don't think that that's always easy for everybody to visualize. And we get the benefit of sitting here and listening to great presentations like this. Not everybody does. I mean, before I was on the Planning Commission, if you asked me what's the definition of high density residential, I'd take an educated guess, but I didn't really know. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. So those are my comments. I think it's really well done. On all fronts. So thank you.
We appreciate that. A quick response. As mentioned, in the code concepts phase of the project is where we can entertain and analyze some of these policy trade-offs. Totally understood on the balance between residential and non-residential, and how that can be a changing target over time. And that's something we want to explore more with the city's assistance in terms of what could be realistic as a part of this round of updates. So appreciate your comments on that, and it's something we'll keep in mind.
I think if that concludes this, we can adjourn this portion of the meeting.
Yes, thank you.
All right. I hereby adjourn the work session. Sandy, are we ready to roll right into the CCI meeting? Okay, I don't see any objections. And somebody would tell me if there was. So. I hereby open the meeting of the Springfield Planning Commission meeting in our capacity as the Committee for Citizen Involvement. Could we have a roll call, please? I don't believe there's any changes, so I don't know that there's need for a roll call. Do you concur, Sandy? Okay. Sandy, you want to put your mic on and repeat that for the rest?
Sorry, thank you for the reminder for the bike. So I did check attendance. Commissioner Weber has not yet joined us, so we'll mark him as continued absent for this meeting, but he may be able to join us by the end.
Thank you. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right, hearing none. The Housing Design Initiative Technical Advisory Committee. Haley, back to you.
Great. This one should hopefully be a little less technical and a little bit more fun. So tonight, for the Committee for Citizen Involvement, we have 2 points for discussion. That is the appointment of the applicants in Attachment 1. There were 17 applicants for the Technical Advisory Committee. And just to go over what the role of the Technical Advisory Committee is, that's to identify, discuss, and resolve technical issues and concerns, provide data and information as requested, and review and provide feedback on draft work products in a timely manner. They'll provide input to staff on specific questions and on the code and plan audit, concepts, and proposed amendments. But may not formally vote or provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission or City Council. Again, they're advising me, and then I may turn around and, provide the Planning Commission or Council with that information, but it's not a voting role necessarily. So in Attachment 1, there's a brief summary at the beginning of that, and that's with the applicant information and responses. So I just wanted to point out just kind of the summary of what kind of applicants you're getting and for review. So overall, we had 5 Springfield residents. That includes people who live within the city and in the urban growth boundary. There were 4 property owners and 2 renters for the Springfield city limits or, city area. 4 business owners, 16 who conducted work in Springfield. So that could, maybe they submit applications to the city. They could be an architect, engineer, planner. They could just work in the city limits, things like that. One community member, so I kind of classified that as maybe they didn't necessarily work in the planning, architecture, they weren't an industry professional, I guess you could say, but they still were living in the community, working in the community, things like that. And again, quite a few, 13 applicants had previous, current, or future volunteer experience in the region. So that could have been any board, volunteer committee position, things like that. As far as the applicants, we got a wide swath, and I'm super excited and proud of all the applicants who came forward and provided their application, regardless of if they're selected or not. Like I mentioned, architects, engineers, planners. I think we got some real estate agents, economic development agents, nonprofit sector, affordable housing. It's all in there, and I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say for who you would like to appoint. So, any questions?
How many people are we appointing? How many do we have to slim it down to?
Yeah. So, a previous technical advisory committee, Mark Rust, for his development code update project, he had 12. So again, tonight you have about 17. And I think it's completely up to the planning commission who they would like to appoint or not. Not saying that we couldn't handle 17, but we're definitely going to need a big room.
Commissioner Swink?
Also, I guess if we're going to pare them down, I mean, I tried to go through them and yeah, there's a nice, variety, thank you, of folks. And so I guess I'm wondering what will be the criteria to filter these folks? I mean, I guess I would need help with that, maybe the commissioners, but I just didn't see anybody that looked like they duplicated or had some disqualifying thing. So thank you.
I'll just kind of chime in there. One worry that I have is sometimes perception is a challenge to overcome. And I think there could be a perception when you have other city staff or planning commissioners and those kind of folks in this role and then in another role. Typically speaking, we don't have somebody on, say, planning commission and budget committee. Those are generally mutually exclusive. And so while there's not any technical rule that would disqualify them, I would have concerns about that unless it was a seat reserved specifically for planning commission. We're specifically involving somebody from planning commission. We're specifically involving this, and it's a seat reserved for that, or council, like with the governance committee. So that would be my only hesitation, because I have a ton of respect for all of the commissioners. I think you all are great people and do a great job, and I commend Commissioner Greenwell's desire to jump in there. I just would worry about, would perception become a problem? And so it's a question on the table. I don't know. I'm not saying it would. I'm not saying it wouldn't. It comes to mind. So I wanted to put that on the table.
I do think that I noticed that there's also a Springfield City employee that applied to, and yeah, that might come across as a perceived conflict of interest.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I think what, Commissioner Driggs, sorry, thank you. I'm with you. I know who you are. I promise. Are getting at is it's that perception. And just to clarify, something that was pointed out to me, conflict of interest definitely has a specific legal definition. And so I'm specifically not saying that it's that. I'm saying that it's a perception, and sometimes perceptions can be damaging. I don't think that there's any technical rule that says any particular person would be disqualified. Otherwise, Christina would be letting us know because she's amazing at keeping us on the right side of the law. But I'm just saying perception.
Yeah, I mean, everyone who's applied has like great experience, and I can see like both planning commissioners and like city staff having a ton to contribute to. It's the perceived conflict of interest.
Um, yeah, and you were clarifying that it was a former city employee, or is
I
it
thought, I can't remember. That's what
current?
Was it? Yeah.
Mhm. Does anybody else have any input? Commissioner Thompson.
Hey, thank you, Chair. I thought I'd just maybe throw this out there. I don't have a recommended cap at this time until we maybe provide until we maybe have further deliberation. I will say, just as an observation of watching other boards or commissions, specifically with elected folks, the groups that have really high numbers, I guess one thing I've noticed is difficult for them at sometimes to achieve consensus because there are so many differing opinions, and that's not a bad thing. I think representation for all walks of life, ethnicities, occupations is very well merited. But I guess I would just caution us, if we do approve a number over 10, 12, all 17, they may have difficulty in upcoming deliberations unless we maybe narrow the field and the focus. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmuck.
Yeah, so to that, I guess I'd like to know a little more about what the committee, what those folks would be tasked with in terms of interface. I mean, if they're going to all get in a room and discuss it, smaller group might be more appropriate, but if they're sending information in after they've reviewed that phase or what have you, then that wouldn't, I think, be as important to me anyway.
So what you're needing from us tonight, or what the goal here would be for us to approve some names for you so you could move forward. So,
I could address Commissioner Schmunk's question. I mean, I think as Haley said, we're not asking them to vote. They don't necessarily have to come to consensus. We're asking them to advise staff. I think Haley has talked about hybrid meetings, at least internally. So in terms of your meeting format, I think there will have to be a meeting because we want the public to be able to observe the process. It won't just be send in your comments kind of thing. But they may not all be in one room. There may be people zooming in, for example. So I think it's really up to the CCI, the commission in your role as the Committee for Citizen Involvement, how you want us to proceed with this. This isn't one where we have strict criteria. It's really, what do you think is going to provide us the best outcome, and weighing those different factors.
Just kind of looking at this from a logistical standpoint. If I'm understanding you, Haley, it's unclear as to the frequency of which you're going to need to bring this group together at this point. You have an idea, but it's not just set in stone, right?
So what we did advertise when we were recruiting was about once a month from June until the end of the year, and about 2 hours for each meeting. So it was kind of, we did have an idea about how frequently we would meet and how long the meetings would be, but we didn't have clear direction on when we would be meeting or the format we'd be meeting at. So it could have been, like Sandy mentioned, it could have been over Zoom. It could be all in a room. If I have 17 people, I kind of need a big room. Or it could be, you know, some applicants could say, I can't meet during the day, but I can meet during the evening. So that would, you know, I'm looking to them to give me direction on the best format and times, you know, meeting conditions work for them.
That answers what I was getting at. I wonder, and I'd entertain a motion on this if somebody agrees with me. I wonder if maybe one way of doing this would be to appoint the 15 without Charles Clark and Pat Greenwell, with the idea that it's likely that a month or two into it, you're not going to have 15 because schedules and those kind of things. And maybe if you have this, if I have 15 going into it, I'm probably going to lose 4 or 5, and I'm going to have 10 out of that. And then my thought on it is, if you see a value to involving a planning commissioner, maybe just name that as like specifically identifying, hey, we'd like to and hold a seat for a commissioner, and just make that abundantly clear that that's what you're looking for, just like the governance committee. I think that would alleviate the perception, because I think that Commissioner Greenwell would add a lot to your advisory committee. I just don't want somebody to say, wait a second. That's my only thing. And it really comes from wanting to protect not only the planning department, but Commissioner Greenwell. So I guess that would be my suggestion, is to just make it clear, like, hey, we are leaving a seat open specifically for a planning commissioner. And maybe there'll be time in the future where it's not filled. Maybe nobody is able to do that, but that seat's open like any of the other committees that we're part of. That's just a suggestion, and you could even potentially do the same thing with council, giving them a seat, an optional seat, whether they choose to use it or not. But it's clearly identified that, hey, we are leaving this open for that role. I don't know how other people feel about that on the commission, but I'd love to hear some discussion on it.
Well, I'm just, Mr. Clark, he's currently employed by the city? Am I
Yes,
confused?
that's correct. He's currently employed.
And then I guess I'm wondering, well, first of all, given what, so would it be, if you got 17 people, would you break them up maybe into groups of 4 for specific types of things, or would everyone be exposed to all material?
Yes, so everyone would be exposed to all the material, but I think maybe the format, like you said, breaking them up into groups could be a good option. Like it could be hey, we're going to pose a question to you. You guys have 5 to 10 minutes to discuss it as in individual groups, and then we'll all come back together and have, somebody speak.
Some strategy to manage 17 people.
Yeah, exactly. I did think one of the applicants actually mentioned attending some of City of Eugene's hosted working group conversations. They mentioned that they were roundtable discussions and that they were more advisory in nature. I've actually attended one of those such meetings recently, where I was in a room with, I think, about 15 people, and it was just kind of, you had a mediator come and call on different people in the audience to give their perspectives, and then, raise your hand, comment if you have an additional comment, things like that. I think it went very well, but yeah, having a strong mediator in the room for when you call on questions or not, and then, like you said, can we break it up into smaller groups? Is that a better form of discussion? I think that is something we could absolutely talk about, and we do have to generate some bylaws for the technical advisory committee. My stance on it is I'd like to take those bylaws to the technical advisory committee for their approval first, and then I would bring that back to the CCI for their review and also approval. Again,
I'm probably betting that I will not be scheduling a technical advisory committee until the end of June, just because we have to give notice to those members. I have to provide a packet for their review at least a week before the meeting, advertisements, things like that. So the end of June would be probably the first technical advisory committee, and then I would come back to the CCI to review those bylaws that I had reviewed with them at that first technical advisory committee meeting.
Thank you. So I'm struggling with, I guess, excluding someone. These people have volunteered and asked to be involved, and I'm not sure what criteria I'd use to eliminate them. I guess the only thing I would be looking for, if you say, 17 is unmanageable, and so then I think we should, we would look at some filter. Yeah, thank you.
Is there a spot for a planning commissioner as like a liaison?
I mean, yes, I do think that it's an interesting question. So, one thing that we did have, now that it's brought up, is our citizen involvement program. This is a 1990 program, but there is language in here about a planning advisory committee program, which is basically what we're creating here. But it does say that one option does include the option for an ex officio member. So that's just an option. We may include a planning commission member. Again, it could be part of the governance committee. It could be part of this group. It's just kind of a matter of what works best. What does the planning commission believe is the best way to move forward with the project?
Yeah, I think at this point I'd entertain a motion.
Okay, well, I'm going to make this motion. I have no problem with including Mr. Clark and Mr. Greenwell. So I'm going to make a motion that we appoint 17 members as listed in the all 17 of the applicants for the Technical Advisory Committee.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion's been seconded. It's open for discussion. Is there any further discussion on this?
Let me speak to the conflict of interest. Sorry, Seth, I didn't see your hand up. In this context, I don't really see that that's an issue. I think it's a concern to pay attention to, so.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to provide for the rationale for my decision to support it. I think if we do decide to disqualify people, we should provide extremely clear criteria for to back up our decision for that, other than we just think that there may be a possible conflict of interest. I think it could also be argued that these individuals, if they are an employee and they are currently on the Planning Commission, they may approach their duties as part of the committee with more dedication than somebody else. So that I think there's some proponents there as well. And I like what you said, Haley, regarding the, parameters within the group. I think it'd be really beneficial if, either from a policy level, we say, prior to these meetings, we'll divide all the participants up into groups of 3. The group of 3 will appoint a speaker, and then the 3 will basically discuss whatever talking points have been directed at them. One of the things I've observed being on more populated boards is that, I feel like a smaller voice and I'm less likely to provide an opinion if it's a big room full of people versus if I have a chance to deliberate one-on-one or one-on-two with somebody else. There's an increased opportunity for me and a likelihood that I will provide constructive feedback. So I just wanted to provide my rationale for supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Yeah, I definitely appreciate, the perspective that you're bringing here. And I think for me, I brought the concern I put it on the table for discussion. And I think that we did have a discussion about it. And probably that meets the bar for me, that it was addressed. And if I'm the only one that is seeing this, and we as a commission feel we can move forward with this, then I'm certainly going to support that. I feel like it's our job to kind of put these questions on the table. And I appreciate the responses from you and Commissioner Schmuck. So with that, is there any further discussion? All right. The motion has been brought and seconded. Can we have a roll call, please, Sandy?
Sure. Commissioner Greenwell?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Driggs?
Aye.
Vice Chair Schmunk?
Aye.
And Chair Buck?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 4 in favor, 1 abstain, 1 absent.
Thank you. Right. Make sure I get my packet right. And I'm kind of off here. So I believe. Okay, where are we at? Sorry, give me 1 second. I lost my place here. Okay. Motion passes. I'd like to call our next agenda item the Housing Design Initiative Governance Committee. Haley, you again.
Okay. Last thing tonight, you guys got this. So this one, again, the governance committee, you'll facilitate alignment with the city council and planning commission and provide policy direction to the project team. That's me and others when it is not practical to convene the city council. So again, city council goes on break over the summer. So that would probably be the time where this ad hoc committee would convene, and that was the city council's direction when they met about this project. I introduced it to them on March 3rd. So again, it's comprised of 2 city councilors and 2 planning commissioners tasked to provide updates to their respective bodies. So again, whoever is appointed will come back to you guys and fill you in on what has been discussed. So yes, any questions with that? Or clarification?
Seems pretty clear. Right. So what you're looking for here is to see if there's any planning commissioners that, if of us, 2 of us would be interested in that. Can I just ask first, of those 5 of us who are here, who would be interested, just to see, maybe it's as easy as there's only 2 of us interested. I would be open to it. I don't know who else out of the 5 of us would be. All right then. So my so it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is that's a commitment. The other 4 commissioners that are here are probably not ready to do. I can be flexible during the summer. Maybe we can ask Commissioner Weber in a future date and see if he would be the second. But before we get to motions, Commissioner Driggs.
I work like out of the county, so I just need to know like times and like dates, but could possibly make it work. I just got a busy schedule.
I guess I'm also wondering, Sandy, do you think that Commissioner Greenwell, who would be appointed to the technical advisory committee, could potentially fill in for the governance committee?
Yeah, I think that's an option. It's up to the commission if you want to do that or not.
I'm kind of viewing these 2 things as separate. I mean, that they're kind of apples and oranges, so I don't necessarily know that the technical advisory committee impacts this.
Not that I want to volunteer you, Commissioner Greenwell.
But yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to time and interest and availability.
Clarify, are these two separate things or are they?
Yes,
Oh.
so the Technical Advisory Committee will meet once a month for 2 hours. The Governance Committee is an ad hoc basis that would probably meet just over the summer, and it would be 2 planning commissioners and 2 city councilors. Who again, it would usually be like, I'm gonna come meet with those two planning commissioners, 2 city councilors, fill them in, and then you might take that information back to the planning commission or city council. Again, it's usually just kind of on that ad hoc basis because council goes on break over the summer. So they just kind of want to be kept in the loop about this project. I think they don't kind of want things to kind of go off the rails, so to speak. There's a lot of moving parts with this project. It's kind of a big lift, big ask. So they just want to be filled in while they're on break.
Gotcha. It would make a lot of sense. I was already at those meetings to then meet with you after. I mean, if no one else wants it, I'm happy on the CDAC as well, but another couple hours, I can do that.
So I guess my question to the commissioners is, what I hear is Commissioner Greenwell is open to it, although you do have a lot you're carrying already, and it's commendable. I appreciate it. I just want to put out there, if you want it, there is the out of asking Commissioner Weber, and if we can clarify time, in that Commissioner Driggs is open to it. So I'm happy to have you. That sounds like a lot to me already.
Is Commissioner Weber already the city council liaison?
He is, but
That's why I'm reluctant to volunteer him.
well, without getting, without kind of crossing any lines, that's pretty easy because he's at a lot of those anyway, because of Michelle, and so yes. And I'm not saying that we would volunteer him. I'm saying we would give him the option.
And thinking about it, I'd probably be more comfortable not doing a dual role for some of the things you brought up earlier.
Okay. So then, I would entertain a motion to give Commissioner Weber the option, and if not, then we would maybe look at myself and Commissioner Driggs, knowing that she'd have to kind of work with time schedules with you. But we'll need a motion.
Actually, if you're gonna wait to make the decision, we don't need a motion. If you're gonna I'm thinking it's sounding like you're wanting to check in with Commissioner Weber maybe. And then,
Well, I think it's up to the commissioners. I was putting
Okay.
that as an option out
all
there.
right, got it.
We could just, I'm sure that Commissioner Weber is not going to lose any sleep if he's not if he doesn't end up on another committee. I'm just going out on a limb there. We could make this as easy as myself and Commissioner Driggs. But I need a motion.
So moved. I just did. Sort of.
All right. Second the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hobson. We've discussed this. Can we have a roll call to clarifying that we're moving to appoint myself and Commissioner Driggs to the Governance Committee?
Chair Buck,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schmunk,
Aye.
Commissioner Driggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Greenwell.
Aye.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 1 absent.
I hereby adjourn the CCI session. The regular meeting, I hereby open the regular meeting of the Springfield Climate Commission. There does not appear to be any change in attendance. Sandy, can you, okay, she's shaking her head, so that's a confirmation. Could we do not need the roll call. So any adjustments to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any corrections to the minutes for the April 15th, 2025 meeting? Okay, hearing none, I hereby approve the minutes for the April 15th meeting with no corrections. Business from the audience.
Chair Buck, we have a member of the community in the audience.
Thank you. Do we have anybody online? Okay. We will now take business from the audience. This is the time in our agenda for the public to provide testimony on any topic relevant to the Planning Commission, not otherwise on our agenda tonight. And then if there's anyone online or in the audience, if you would like to speak, please use the raised hand feature or fill out a card, request to speak, and give it to the Planning Commission Assistant, Sarah. When called upon to speak, please state your name, mailing address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
We have no one requesting to speak.
Excellent. We will now hear business from the Planning Commission. Are there any reports on council action? Commissioner Schmuck?
Okay, this is May 5th City Council meeting, Springfield City Council meeting. The staff provided a draft of master fees and changes to fiscal year 26. The goal was to streamline the process, and staff consolidated various fee documents into a single fee schedule known as the master fees and charges, and ensuring that the fee structures are fair and reasonable. And then there was a joint meeting with the City Council and County Commissioners to co-adopt amendments to the Springfield Development Code Campus Industrial District. And then City Council meeting, among other business, there was a public hearing on wastewater and stormwater user fees for fiscal 25-26. Business from the city manager included ratification Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission fiscal year 26 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan, city agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and approval of support for the development of affordable housing projects in Springfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. I had a report assigned to me for a council session on May 19th yesterday. I have not had the opportunity to observe it yet, so I will provide my report at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very understandable. Any other reports? All right. Are there any other business from the Planning Commission?
You got me over here. Leading up
Yep.
into the next agenda item, Sandy, we have any applicants for filling that last spot?
On the Planning Commission? So we had 4 applicants. They were going to be interviewed by the council earlier, but the agenda got pretty full, so council decided to delay until June. Subsequently, 2 of the applicants have dropped out, so they'll be interviewing, assuming it's going as planned, they'll be interviewing 2 applicants at their meeting on June 1st. I'll continue on and say, I don't know when you're going to meet next. We don't have anything scheduled in the immediate short-term future. However, don't count on having the whole summer off. I think there is some things in the works for you. So we'll be in touch when we do have the next meeting scheduled.
Council meets on June 2nd.
I'm talking about the Planning Commission.
No, I know.
Oh.
You said originally with the council, it's June 2nd, not the 1st.
Okay, sorry.
And just to clarify, Sandy and Sarah, without referring to my text, I believe we have a meeting, a joint meeting with the county coming up the 29th of one of those months, July, I want to say.
I don't know. Andy, I know, was trying to schedule it, but he hasn't told me that it's been confirmed and put it on the calendar. So
Okay, so it's still tentative.
I think, as far as I know,
Okay, just go ahead.
I know that he was polling to find out from both commissions, but I have not heard a confirmation.
And can you clarify and remind me one more time what we're meeting jointly with the county for? I can't remember what that was for.
Pardon? I don't think so. I think it's eWeb. I think it's amendments to the Glenwood Refinement Plan to allow the treatment facility for eWeb's project in Glenwood.
Perfect. Thank you. So nothing on the schedule as of yet going forward, but you'll let us know.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other business from the Planning Commission before we adjourn? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and adjourn. Oh. Yeah, I just asked for that. Do we have anything from the planning department? Okay, yeah. All right. I hereby adjourn the Planning Commission regular meeting.